I'm Goldie. Thanks so much for listening this morning. I'm so happy to have our next guest back in studio with us. It is Hoke County Sheriff Hubert Peterkin. I should say sheriff/author.
Good morning, Goldie. It's always good to be here. It's a pleasure and honor to be amongst you guys, and I just love being on your program. Allow me first to say good morning to one of the best counties in the state, Hoke County, who often listens to this show, and it's an honor to be able to represent them this morning.
Last time you were here was in December. I was on my extended holiday vacation, so I missed you. So it's really been a little bit of time since you and I have seen each other. And I remember the last time you were here, we had just had a bunch of instances where African-American drivers had been hurt, killed in traffic stops across America. And you and I talked a lot about that. And now you have written a book called How to Stop for a Cop, Reconnecting Law Enforcement and the Community.
Yes, sir. And I will tell you, Goldie, this is probably, when I came on your show, it actually started me thinking. Because when I came on this show, I began to get a lot of requests from all across the state to talk on this subject. Served on panels with our legislators and General Assembly members. They had me to sit on panels. So this became a regular for me. And finally, I just said, let's put something together. So I was very blessed to find the information I needed and put something together that goes beyond just stopping for a cop.
You explain why you do the things you do when you are pulled over in a traffic stop.
Well, let me say the book, it has a step-by-step guide for drivers on what to do from the very second you see that blue light. Mm-hmm. I don't just tell them what to do, but I go in detail and tell them why. Why should you do these things? I'm very, very personal with it from experience and training that I've seen. Then I reach across the aisle and then I remind officers that it's absolutely important that we do the right thing all the time as it relates to traffic stops. And I remind them of things that we should be doing and not be doing when we deal with the public and when we're stopping cars.
31 years you've been in law enforcement. You started, I don't know if you started here in Fayetteville, but you certainly spent some time on the Fayetteville PD.
I'm home. When I come to Fayetteville, I'm home. Fayetteville PD has been, that was absolutely one of the best parts of my career. I spent 16 years here. And I tell you, Fayetteville trained their officers well, and I commend them for what they've done and what they're doing, but they prepared me for where I'm at in my career right now.
It's interesting, the timing of your book, because it was just a couple of days ago that we had this story about how the state of North Carolina is putting new guidelines out in their driver's handbooks on what to do if pulled over by police. Yes.
Actually, Representative Ken Goodman, he was my representative at the time. They just redone the lines, so he's moved. But he and I was doing this at the same time. So we talked and laughed about it, and but what I like about the bill, this adds another piece to it. I don't think there's too much that we can do as it relates to traffic stops. And my number one rule is that everyone stay alive. At the end of the stop, everybody goes home safely. No one get hurt. No one gets shot. No one gets killed. That's the number one rule in my book. When you flip the first 3 pages, that's going to be the first thing you see in the book.
Before we get into the meat of the book, let's talk about the process. Have you ever written a book before?
Never, ever. In school, I've written papers that was probably the size of a book, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But I'm a songwriter. I always love writing music. I published some I didn't publish, but I just love writing music. So writing a book was never in my on my list of things to do. But I found it very delightful. It was a little frustrating at times because writing this book, I had to make sure I didn't pick a side. I stayed in the middle. And I wanted to make sure that both law enforcement and the community and drivers understood what they needed to do. And it needed to be a mutual respect between both. That's the only way it's going to end well. And I believe that if an officer and the driver respectfully do what's necessary during a traffic stop, no one have to end up in an argument, fight, shooting, death. It would minimize the problems that we're seeing across the United States right now.
Where did you find the time to do this, Sheriff Peterkin? Obviously, being the sheriff of a county like Hoke County, it's a pretty time-consuming job. So where do you find the time to write, what'd you say, 160-page book?
It is 160 pages.
So this is not a pamphlet.
It's not. No.
This is a real full-fledged book. So what kind of hours did you find?
I'm laughing because while everybody else's head was on the pillow, I was up writing. I actually found time. I would go to bed at a decent hour, and I would get up at 2 in the morning. A lot of times, 3 in the morning, get coffee, write the sun up, get showered up, and go to work. Mm-hmm. And that gave my mind time to relax, rest, and I was fresh when I was writing. So that's when I did a lot of my writing, was in the wee hours of the morning.
I imagine that the how to stop for a cop stuff was probably, I don't want to say easy for you, but probably easier than the other part of the book, which is reconnecting law enforcement and the community.
It was a little bit, but I had to focus on that subtitle. And this is how I said this on your show 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. The law enforcement needs the community, and the community needs law enforcement. And what I've learned from talking with people throughout the community is we feel that the blame is on them. And I had to say in the book that we are at fault sometimes. I had to admit that we're not right all the time. We don't do the right thing all the time. That's why I was reminding us of what we're supposed to do. I talk about use of force. I talk about arrest, search, and seizures. I talk about racial profiling. I talk about community policing. So I had to let the reader know that we both share into the problems of traffic stop issues.
How are your colleagues going to react to those conclusions? You think you're going to hear from some of your police officers?
Sure, I hope so.
Your sheriff deputies?
I hope I do. But I've actually had officers, as I wrote segments, I had them to oversee it, look at it, give me their input. Mm-hmm. But my thing is, if you are an officer with integrity, and you want to do the right thing, why would you worry about being reminded of something that you are trained to do over and over again? And my thing is, too, Goldie, officers are not trained to go out with attitudes. They're not trained to stop a car just because they want to. They're not trained to stop a car because someone is a Latino, black, or any other reason. They're not trained to do all those things. Something happens. So that's why I'm reminding officers. And I've seen it both as an officer and as a manager of a law enforcement agency. And I share that in my book. Each chapter in this book has a reflection at the end. That's the part that people don't know. Mm-hmm. I give a reflection. So if I'm talking about ethics in law enforcement, there's a reflection, a real reflection of a situation dealing with that topic. And the same thing with racial profiling, the same thing with use of force. There are reflections for people to see. And then there's a message to law enforcement at the end of that, and a message to the community. The main purpose of this book is to not only tell the drivers and the community what to do or how to do, but to remind officers of what to do and make sure that everybody respects each other when they were confronted in a traffic stop or any given situation where we have to do our job.
Talking with Sheriff Hubert Peterkin here on Good Morning Fayetteville. Do you think you have ever been pulled over because of the color of your skin?
Read the book.
I will take that as a yes.
Read the book. That's why I shared reflections. I've seen it. I would like to sit here and tell the public that 100% of our business and law enforcement is foolproof and everybody does it right. But I would be telling a lie. I will not do that. And that's why when I talk about supervision and accountability, I'm telling leaders, sheriffs, police chiefs, anyone that manage law enforcement to make sure that they hold their people accountable. When they get in front of me, when my officers get in front of me, you would think they're the sweetest thing you ever seen. Mm-hmm. They're just as nice and humble, but I want to think that when they go out on the beat, that's the same person, but that's not always the case. So that's why I'm so stern on us, because we have a real serious obligation to do what's right. And I'm telling the public to do what's right. You got to respect what we do. I've had friends who were killed in this business in my 31 years, officers in other agencies around me killed. I've been to funerals. I mean, it's not a good feeling and it's not a good read to see this. And then you don't want officers to do something, overreact, and take a life. So I'm very passionate about this subject, and I think you can see it in my face.
Yeah.
This is serious business. And, we're forming a task force right now. I'm talking to persons of all around the state to join this task force. We want to get together, sit down at the table. Let's be proactive, not reactive. This situation goes to sleep. It's not gone away. And every time we have a shooting, it gets crazy. So we don't want to wait for something to happen. Let's get on top of it now so that the public knows that we care about it enough, and they won't go out and start rioting and burning down buildings and ambushing law enforcement. They have to know that we in law enforcement, leaders, grassroots, even our young teenage drivers are concerned enough to deal with this problem right now.
Let me tell you a quick story that Mayor Chris Ray told me a few years ago, and I'll never forget it. It has stayed with me all this time. He sat in that chair where you're sitting right now, and we were talking about some of the instances of drivers being pulled over and trouble ensuing. And I asked him the same question I just asked you. I said, have you ever been pulled over because of the color of your skin? And he related an incident to me. He was driving to see a good friend of his. He was driving his Escalade. He was going to a predominantly white upscale neighborhood. He gets pulled over. And the officer comes up to him and says, where are you going? Why are you in this neighborhood? And Chris Ray, the mayor of Spring Lake, says, I'm going to visit a friend. This is his address. And the officer goes, okay, continue on. And then the officer proceeds to follow Mayor Ray until he reaches his destination. His friend comes out of the house to greet him, sees the police cruiser behind the Escalade, and says to Mayor Ray, oh, you get a police escort when you come over to my house, thinking that because he was the mayor, he was getting some sort of police escort, and it was pretty much the exact opposite.
And it's not a good feeling. We don't want the public to feel they can't trust us or we're targeting them. And I tell my officers that work at the Hoke County Sheriff's Office that no matter what the status is or the colors of someone's skin or what kind of neighborhood they live in, treat everyone the same. There should not be a difference anywhere, any way, shape, or form. Treat them all the same. And so I say again, when we're trained, we're not trained to have this. So I talk about prejudices and stereotypes. And I say to officers in the book, if you have that problem, find another job.
Yeah.
I'm that direct in the book. You're in the wrong business. Don't make it bad for everyone else because you have a problem. And it's important to do those self-evaluations I talk about in the book. Check yourself once in a while. Let's don't take it too high. Make sure that we're giving off the vibes where people feel good about us. I know what it feels like to have people feel good about us. I remember the times I used to work Groveview Terrace. I worked the Merck. I worked all those areas and loved those people. I shook their hands. So what? If you're on the corner and I thought you was a drug dealer, if I didn't catch you or see you selling drugs, I treated you with respect. This is the way we have to do this. So we got to get back to the roots of how all of this started and try to regain the trust of the public.
I got Sheriff Hubert Peterkin in studio with me from Hoke County. Good to see you, Hubert. Are you still the top sheriff in North Carolina?
I am presently serving as the chair of the North Carolina Sheriff's Association Executive Board.
Good for you.
Enjoying that, too.
And you've been doing this now, I think, for a couple of years, because the last time you were on, I think you had just been elected president of the organization.
Right. I served as president, and now I'm serving the second year as the chair. So it's been a ride.
Very nice.
Yes.
The sheriff is here because he has a book that he has written. It is called How to Stop for a Cop, Reconnecting Law Enforcement and the Community. So we've kind of got the writing process down, and we've talked a little about driving while black being stopped. Let's talk about what you do. If you are pulled over, you see those flashing lights behind you, maybe even a siren. What is the first thing you do when you see that you are being pulled?
Take a deep breath and relax. Calm down. I don't think it's a feeling that you could ever get used to. I've been in law enforcement 31 years, and I can tell you right now, even when I see the blue light,
your heart starts pounding.
Right. And so officers, I remind officers of what the driver's going through, and then I also remind the driver of what the officer is going through. It's an emotional thing, situation for both drivers and officers. It's a tedious situation. So the first thing I tell drivers when they see that blue light, I know you're thinking, what did I do wrong? What did I do? What is he pulling me over for?
Right.
And then don't immediately assume. Don't start assessing. If you're African American and you see a white officer getting out of the car, don't immediately assume that it's racial profiling or something's wrong. Don't do that. I can tell you, most of us, we are in it to win it. We're in it to take care of you. We know what our goals and responsibilities are. So just take your time. Just slow down. Do what you need to do. And I go into all the steps. I elaborate on the steps. But the first thing I say, calm down.
It's great advice. Take a deep breath.
Right. Get your car safely off the road.
Because, again, you don't know if you were speeding. Well, you usually do know if you were speeding, but it could be a broken taillight. We've had instances here in Fayetteville where folks have been pulled over because they resembled a suspect in something else that the Fayetteville PD was working on.
And I say that in the book. And one thing, based on my research, all cultures, all races have concerns. It's not just the black community or the top two communities are the black community, then the Latino community. This is why we did the book in Spanish. We wanted to make sure that they got it. And I learned from talking with a lot of my Latino associates that, they like to read stuff in their native language. So we that's why we had it translated so they can read it and comfortably read it and learn the same things that everybody else does. Yes, sir.
If an unmarked car stops you, and we have had a number of instances of this here in Cumberland County, where an unmarked car has pulled somebody over, and it turns out that is somebody impersonating a police officer. So what is your advice if you are pulled over by an unmarked car and you just don't know if the person behind you pulling you over is law enforcement or not? I
think it's safe to say I did address this in the book. There's a section in the book titled Frequently Asked Questions with Answers, and that's one of them. Get the book.
Get the book.
Yeah, but so just to help you a little bit, I talk about, because the one thing you don't want to do is give, if you don't think it's an officer, and it is, the one thing you don't want to do is, because the officer doesn't know what you're thinking, he doesn't know what's going on in your car.
Right.
The one thing you don't want to do is give him the impression that you're not wanting to stop, or you're doing something in the car, or you carrying drugs, or you just committed a crime, and you continue to keep going and not stopping. So when I address this in the book, I tell the drivers how to deal with this, so it won't be misinterpreted when that officer is behind you. A way to confirm it, how to use your 911 system, the whole 9 yards. So I cover every bit of that. That's one of the questions, one of the big questions that I get all the time. So I address that question in the book.
Here's a question I have. If I'm being pulled over and it's a very dark area, if I proceed to the first lighted area, how far can you go when you see those lights go on behind you? How far can you go before the officer behind you will start thinking you're not stopping?
The same question you just asked. I answered that, plus which really I did.
That's a frequently asked question too.
No, it is. I tied them together, because I get that question all the time. And there's a series of steps I give the reader of how to do this and how safely to do it. And the officer will respect it, and he will feel a lot more comfortable if you do it the way that I'm asking you to do it in the book. What's
the biggest mistake that people make in a traffic stop?
They overreact. They're not respectful. They make assumptions. They want to deal with the complaint on the side of the road. Big mistake. Chapter 8 is titled "How to Stop for a Cop Step by Step," blue light. Chapter 9 is how to make a complaint. I'm telling them how to file a complaint, what the process consists of. It varies from agency to agency, but it's pretty much on point. We're nationally accredited, but it's still in line with most organizations. But I'm telling you, don't try to deal with situations. Don't get mad. The officer, you got to let him do his job. So let's both have mutual respect for each other. If the officer is not respectful, you do what you're supposed to do. Don't make it. That's why I did the chapter 9 on how to file a complaint. But don't overreact and confront. Try to deal with it. Don't get mad. Just follow the protocol. Let's just do it.
Sheriff Hubert Peterkin, his new book will be out at the end of the month. It is called How to Stop for a Cop, Reconnecting Law Enforcement and the Community. So here's another question I have. Does yes, sir, no, sir or yes ma'am, no ma'am, does that go a long way?
Absolutely.
It does.
Yes, it does.
So that means something
Both
to an
ways.
officer pulling you over.
Both ways.
Sure.
Both ways.
Mutual respect.
Yes, I was taught, again, Hubert Peterkin, the first thing you should do when you walk up to that car is to immediately tell the driver why you stopped him.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, ma'am. I stopped you because you ran the red light at the intersection of Grove Street and 95. That calms them.
Right. Now you know why you've been pulled over.
Good morning, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
That goes a long way. And so mutual, not just the driver, but the officer as well.
The other part of the book, we keep saying how to stop for a cop, but the other part of the title is reconnecting law enforcement in the community. You knew Harold Medlock well.
Yes.
We knew Harold Medlock well. He was our police chief that brought community policing back to Fayetteville. I think Chief Hawkins has been doing a great job since Harold left us year ago. I guess it was last summer. It was,
right.
I guess in the spring he left.
Right.
Talk a little about community policing, how you handle it in Hoke County, how important it is, and how it goes a long way in what you said. When you used to walk a beat and you used to shake people's hands and they knew their cop on the beat back in the day.
I'm smiling because when I started with Fayetteville Police Department in 1987, you didn't get a car first. Mm-hmm. You had to walk the beat for one whole year. So I had Hay Street and all down Person Street, all downtown, and it gave you a chance to really interact with the public. But anyway, Chief Ron Hansen was my first chief. Community policing was very big. Matter of fact, there's a section in the book about community policing, a chapter. I talk about some of his tactics. I mention him in the book. It's a plus. You got to have that relationship with people. We don't want to, and so we do programs. We got a ton of stuff. My agency used to, they used to say, why are we doing all this? But they saw the difference in how important it was when we would go out and we do things with the community, give them a chance to get up close and personal. And, in the book, I do say, back in the day, we focused on the kids. The kids were the ones that feared law enforcement. They would see a cop and they would get behind mom and hide, and they didn't want to talk to us because they was afraid. So we did all the officer friendly stuff and stranger danger and all this stuff and give them little badges and pencils. But now we're dealing with a different audience who fear us or don't trust us. So community policing is absolutely a big thing. Yes, Medlock came back and he brought it back and they were on a roll. I met our new chief here. She is just absolutely amazing. Yeah. She sent me cards and I'm hearing nothing but good stuff from her and the things that she's doing. And I'm looking forward to even being involved with them even more.
What else do you want people to know about the book? We got a couple of minutes left here with Sheriff Peterkin. If this book takes off, can you see yourself becoming a full-time author, writing some more books? Yeah,
I can see it. I'm already getting more ideas. I receive calls. I'm receiving calls from all over the U.S. right now, which is absolutely amazing to me. Getting speaking engagements already, which I've always, that's nothing new, but I'm getting offers to come and speak on this topic. The colleges, also to different BLET situations and programs. So I probably will write something else. But this has been very interesting. One thing I will say about the book, it's going to be in several formats. I've been asked this already. So it will be in English and Spanish. It will be ebook. You will have an audio book, both where you can download from Audible, and there's an audio CD. It will be hard copy, soft copy. So we did it in just about every format that you can get it in because we want to make sure that it's about the message. It's not about the money. I want people to buy it. I want them to share it with their loved ones, their young people, and then go there. I wrote the book where a 16-year-old would pick up the book and want to read it. I tested them. As I wrote, I tested college kids. I wanted them to see. I wanted to see if it was on their level or interest, and so far so good. And also, it's going to be very affordable. Right now, it'll be priced. If I was going to sell you a book today, you're talking $15, maybe 95 cents. Online, maybe $17. The hard copy maybe 19, and some change. But I wanted to be very affordable, and most people that I'm speaking with have said to me that they want to buy. A lady told me yesterday she wanted 25 books for all of her employees and some of the kids, and that meant a lot to me for them to want to do that. But if you just share the message, that's what this is all about. Follow me on Facebook, How to Stop for a Cop. Hubert Peterkin, How to Stop for a Cop. We got a website, hubertpeterkin.com, and then my email is lifematters@hubertpeterkin.com.
Nice. The last thing I'll ask you, Sheriff, with the advent of body cameras, you had body cameras in Hoke County before I think we even had them here in Fayetteville. How have body cameras changed the traffic stop?
Oh, tremendously. I mean, everybody's using, all the kids.
You're always on camera,
I mean,
no matter where you are.
I mean, so my thing is, and I will tell you, and I say this to a lot of sheriffs, that was the best money I ever spent. It has really done us well. It has shown the officer wrong sometime, but it also has showed the community or the driver wrong many times, more than the officer. But it's about accountability, and if my officer is not doing something right, then I want to know. So I think it's a big thing, but it's really something that's popular now, and I'm seeing more agencies getting more comfortable with the body cam process.
Right. Not Cumberland County, though. Our Sheriff's Department, I don't believe, are using body cameras yet, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they are or not. No.
Sheriff Hubert Peterkin, it's great seeing you again. It's been too long, and when the book comes out at the end of this month, we'll have you back maybe in a few weeks, and we'll come back and we'll be able to talk a little more about what's in the book.
Well, Goldie, I want to tell you right now, you'll get a complimentary copy.
Oh, thank you.
Signed,
of course.
And I am going to make sure, because I want you to read it, and it's important to me about what you think.
You got it.
Yes, sir.
Hubert, good seeing you. Thanks so much for coming in.